deep dark hills of eastern Kentucky. That's the place where I trace my bloodline, and it's there I read on a hillside gravestone. You will never leave Harlan alive.
I was fortunate enough to grow up in eastern Kentucky in a uniquely American Appalachian culture, and we're back so that we can explore some of the history and some of what I grew up with. For centuries, the mountain range was a barrier between the colonies on the east coast and the Indian Territory to the west. That is until frontiersmen like Daniel Boone came through.
Daniel Boone said at one point in his life that heaven must be a Kentucky kind of place. So for about a 30-year period, Daniel Boone spent a lot of time exploring and living in Kentucky. From his first long hunt, where he and some fellow travelers came through the Russell Fork Canyon, which is now called the Breaks, into Kentucky, until he lived on Brushy Fork in Nicholas County, which was his last Kentucky home. So there was about a 30-year span there where he explored and lived in Kentucky. He and some of his fellow pioneers established Boonesboro. So he had a very long and colorful life. One of my favorite stories is the one where he and some long hunters were camped on Station Camp Creek up near present day Irvin, Kentucky, and which is, by the way, a trout stream. But it's now a trout stream. But anyway, they kept having run-ins with the Shawnee. So finally, most of the party decided to leave. They'd had enough. And they went back to North Carolina. Well, Boone and his brother-in-law, John Stewart, decided to stay in Kentucky and trap throughout the rest of the winter. And so during that period, Boone and John Stewart got separated. And Boone could not find Stewart. He looked and looked and looked, and he just assumed Stewart had either perished through an accident or Indians had killed him. He just didn't know what had happened. 5 years later, Boone and some other guys were blazing what we now know as Boone Trace or the Wilderness Road up through Rockcastle County toward Boonesboro. And they were crossing the Rockcastle River on a ford, and there was a big hollow sycamore tree right there on the banks of the river. And Boone peered down into the hollow in that tree and found a human skeleton. So he pulled that skeleton out and examined it, and it was his brother-in-law, John Stewart. So it's one of the great frontier mysteries how John Stewart got from present-day Irvin all the way down to present-day Livingston, Kentucky, which is like 40, 50 miles. And you know, why he was found in a hollow tree. Nobody knows for sure. Again, one of the great frontier mysteries. And I had the opportunity to fish the Rockcastle right there where that happened, as well as Station Camp. And that became a chapter in my book. So if you like, the outdoors and fly fishing and frontier lore, particularly Boone lore, I would urge you to pick up the book. But Boone's life was just full of amazing stories like that. He was quite the unique character.
And here it is, the famous Cumberland Gap, a pass between the mountains that Daniel Boone blazed out what was known as the Wilderness Road. Daniel Boone likely followed Cumberland Gap in using trails that have been used by the natives for centuries. These trails were originally laid down by herds of bison and are commonly called buffalo traces. From this point, you can see Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee. While most early Americans saw the Appalachian Mountains as an obstacle between the eastern colonies and the frontier of the West, there were others, strong-willed and determined, that saw the mountains and the rugged terrain as comforting and a beautiful place to live. They set up little communities that dot the landscape all across the mountain range. The frontiersmen and the first Appalachian colonists would have moved in and built homes just like this one. This is actually Daniel Boone's last cabin in Kentucky before he moved to Missouri. And if you come through, you can take a look and see a lot of the houses from that time period would have been built very similarly with local logs, local stone. Go inside. It's important to understand that Daniel Boone and the first frontiersmen were not the first Appalachians. That title belongs to the Paleo Indians, a group of Native Americans that were here 10 to 15,000 years ago during the Ice Age, at which time they were following around the herds of the megafauna, hunting things like bison, giant sloth, mastodons, and even mammoths. As the world got warmer, the tribes became less nomadic, settled down. By the time that the Europeans first got here, the Native Americans had already established well-defined tribes, cities, agricultural plots, and forever changed the landscape. Right behind me is one of the earthen mounds that was built over 1,000 years ago, demonstrating that people have been here for a very long time. It's also important to acknowledge the Native American contribution to Appalachian culture. Without the knowledge of the land, the plants, the animals in the area, the early frontiersmen probably wouldn't have been successful. A lot of us with mountain heritage, including myself, also share some Native American ancestry. Here it is. This is where I grew up. Little Sandy Hook, Kentucky. Walking through here. So many memories from such a small town. Our little house sat right here. It's burnt down now. But in these woods, this is where I learned about ginseng, morel mushrooms, pawpaws, sassafras, willow bark, all that good stuff. This was my playground growing up. Over there, we had a garden. It's all grown up now. You can't see it, but this was home. All right. Well, I'm here in Sandy Hook with Anita Skaggs, who's a local historian and somehow related to me. I'm not for sure exactly how.
Husband.
Who's the husband? We're related. Anyways, I was catching up with her on some of the genealogy in the area. Anita, can you tell us a little bit about how people moved into Appalachia, this side of the mountains, after Daniel Boone blazed the trail?
I really think that it was word of mouth, and maybe letters. Probably. Anyway, the news got back to the family still in Virginia about what was going on here in Kentucky, that there was lots of land, and that's what people wanted. And Southwest Virginia was getting very populated at that time. So then they decided, well, we're going to go to Kentucky and see what it's all about. And I'm glad they did. But, it was, in my mind, I think about it and I just can't imagine how our ancestors did it. They had to be true pioneer people because they had to give up everything. Because when they moved up here, it wasn't like they were going to get to go back.
Kentucky bug.
And it wasn't like they was ever going to get to go home again. They weren't going to get to see the family they left behind ever again. And they had, and go on. So, it was a hard decision to make, but they made it and they came up here and most of them did well. After they got here, it was a lot of farming. They had clear. If you follow in Kentucky in the 1850, 1860, 1870, 1880, they did a special census, which is called the agricultural census. And that gives you a story on how much land they had, how much was cleared, how much wasn't, how many cows they had, how many they milked, chickens, eggs. If they had bees, it told how many hives, how much honey, sheep, and how many were sheared that year, how much fleece they'd gotten, if they raised flax, if they raised tobacco. Everything is in that, and it really gives you a good insight on how well they, were making it at that time. Some didn't have as much as others, which is,
Right.
but it told whether they owned their property or not, if they rented, and they brought their knowledge, what they knew from Virginia up here. So when they get up here, it's starting all over. What little bit they brought with them from Virginia, that's all they had when they got here. They had to start from ground zero. They had to get their property. They had to clear it and then be able to build and then be able to fix lots for their animals and start clearing the fields, areas for the garden and the crops they would grow. Wheat and corn was a big crop. Tobacco, it was starting around 1880, but after that's when it got more prevalent.
Right.
And, but, when you think about it, they had to make everything. And because they couldn't bring anything with them, and you can't order it. And so everything they had to make. Oh.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what do you think drew people to areas like this? Why didn't they go further west? What made them stay here?
I think it's because it's familiar.
Because it was familiar?
I think it's because it's familiar. Because when you look at the crop, if you look at here and then you look where they came from down in Virginia, in Southwest Virginia, it's very similar.
Right.
I think we have more ground. I mean, more ground that could be tilled, worked, flatter ground.
Right.
Than they did, and we don't have a whole lot of that. But I really, it's always fascinated me why they came, but I think they followed family.
Right.
Because, like I was telling you earlier, I know that as far as my family goes, probably, I know the Mocks, because I'm related to Peter Mock on Mock Ridge. I know that he was here as early as 1815 buying the property. And he owned over 3,000 acres.
Oh, wow.
On Mock Ridge.
Wow.
Yeah, and we still own some of that property today. That's where my daughter Lisa lives.
That's nice to hang on to.
It is. It's really neat. And it's just, so, his family, the Mocks, all followed him up here. I think they found out about him getting the property. They would, people would come up here and start stores. And, I really just feel like they followed.
That's still kind of a tradition.
And that's
here,
still a
isn't it?
tradition. Yes, because when they started leaving here, like I said, the migration to Ohio, up 23 up north, started between 1910 and 1920. People started going over to Portsmouth and Ironton, and they get jobs in the card factory or the shoe factory, and then more industry started on up in Ohio, and they'd all go up there, and they'd come back, and they tell their family about it. I can get you a job. Right. Come on with me, and I'll get you a job. And so Ohio owes a huge debt to Elliott County, Kentucky. Because I've owned this hotel for 13 years, and I've never been a week without somebody from Ohio. Wonderful place to grow up. You all know that.
Yes.
Maybe at the time we didn't appreciate it, but now we do. Elliott County is very rural, and it's been hard, and our road infrastructure's not good, and that hurts us a lot. I like our camera woman is agreeing.
Well, I was showing her, exactly where I grew up at.
Yes.
Sheepskin Road, and I was explaining to her, we had this house here before city water came through. So
Oh,
we
yeah.
got our water from a pond that was
Oh,
up
yes,
on the hill.
I did too. I never dreamed. We were like you. We had fun. Yeah, you bought your drinking water and all that.
Right.
But, but the water to work your home came from a pond, and it wasn't fun when that went dry.
Now, the industry's here when I was a kid, too. I remember coal miners, I remember tobacco farmers, and I remember people cutting lumber.
Well, we still have a lot of people off. Coal's non-existent now.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. And the tobacco, they bought the tobacco out 20 years ago. And so tobacco's not being raised here in that long, but we still have a lot of farmers who, do the cattle and all that. Now the prison has brought a lot of jobs here. We have a state minimum security prison, and it's being enlarged. I think they have 1,000 inmates, and they'll have 1,000 more when it's done in July. No, my husband, when we first got married 40 years ago, he worked strip mines. That's what coal was booming. And, the closest he was ever at home was they had a job down in Greenup. He was there for a while, but then the rest of the time he was in Breathitt. So that was 2-hour drive that they made every day. 2 hours, a 4-hour drive. 2 hours up there, 2 hours back. He got out of the coal, working in the coal mines. He's a pipe fitter by trade. He's a welder. And so then he started, if we were lucky, if he got to work down at Marathon at Ashland. But for the most part, he worked in Ohio for about 10 years. That's what they do. They travel. They leave home, and they're journeymen in every sense of the word.
Well, I remember when the tobacco went out, and then all the coal mines closed. There was a lot of poverty in the area.
Yes, there still is.
And I grew up in some of that, but like in a setting like this,
you don't feel it.
No, you don't.
It's not. There's not really everybody's on the same page, pretty much.
Yeah.
Nobody, we don't look at that.
Right.
Because, we take care of everybody. I tell everybody when they're coming here to live, I said, it's not convenient.
Right.
If you're used to McDonald's, if you're used to Walmart being 2 minutes away, Lowe's 5 minutes away, I said, that ain't happening here.
No, but
you gotta go Grayson, Moorhead, or Ashland. Yes, when they come here, I'll tell them if you can't take the curves, we'll stay on 64 till you get to the 172 exit and come in by Grayson. But do they listen to me? Honey, let me tell you. I tell my husband all the time, if people would follow Jesus like they do that GPS, they come in here and I'll tell them, do not get it off at Moorhead. And they come in here, it's just like they've been to deliverance coming down 32. Now, if they don't watch it, sometimes it'll take them, when they hit 32, it'll take them out 504.
Yeah.
And then
they're really
and
lost.
then sometimes the interstate, and then it'll take them to Moorhead, Grayson, and it'll bring them up Sankin. You remember Sankin?
Yes.
Yeah. Now they have been to the deliverance then. But no, it has, but once people get here, they come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even the people who come to visit, they come and they just fall in love with it. We are just, but I'm thankful that our ancestors wanted to come here.
Yes.
I am. I'm thankful.
When I was young, I couldn't wait to move away, but now now I'm so grateful that my childhood was here.
Because you look at everything differently when you grow up. When you grow up.
Right. Yep.
When you grow up. Oh, I remember you as a little boy so well. But no, you can't beat growing up here. Elliott County is about 20 years behind everybody else. And I always tell everybody, I said, this will be the most politically incorrect place you'll ever be.
Oh, yeah.
Because, it's just, I mean, how many hotels can you go in the backyard and target shoot? Line
Right.
up your gun. My hunters go back here and we just let them. They'll come in and say, "Where's the shooting range?" I said, "Out back."
This is rugged terrain here.
Oh yes, it is.
We got mountains, we got cliff faces, we got creeks that if you fall in, you drown in.
Yeah, you can.
And
yes.
why do you stay here?
Uh-huh.
Undoubtedly, the most famous resident of Sandy Hook was the country music legend Keith Whitley. So this is the old farm where we used to raise tobacco. When I was growing up, all this out in front, all that back on the bank was all tobacco fields. The first cave I ever crawled in, ever played in. This is our local landmark, Laurel Gorge. When I was growing up here, there was two main industries, tobacco farming and coal mining. Well, when the tobacco farm stopped producing and the coal mine shut down, a lot of people in the area were left in poverty. They couldn't afford to take care of their animals anymore. So they went and they released a lot of their farm animals. We're down in Breathitt County, Kentucky, on an old strip mine out at a place called Elkview. And believe it or not, there's actually wild horses running around this park. And if you take a look over there, you can see a few in the distance. We're getting closer to some of the wild horses. We brought a snack to see if maybe they'll let us get close. This is incredible. So, Laura feeding the horses. Hey, buddy. There you go. Oh my gosh. You might be a little pushy. Or are you hungry as a horse? Well, someone turned a cow loose up here. He don't look quite as friendly as the horses, though. Just probably gotta leave him on his own. Driving off the mountain and look, a couple more of the wild horses. Hey, buddy. Only in Kentucky, y'all. Whenever I tell people I'm from Kentucky, the first question I get is about racehorses and bluegrass. And while Kentucky has become synonymous with thoroughbreds and the gently rolling hills of central Kentucky, we do things a little bit different up in the mountains. So horses are an important part of the Appalachian culture. They date back from before the time of roads. It was the only way to get around. And still to this day, if you're up in the mountains, you're going to find a lot of people riding the horses. So Daniel Boone said, the key to happiness is a good horse, a good woman, and a good gun.
Talk about is a rifle. Rifles during the 18th century, they were around, but they weren't near as popular as the gun I'll show you now, which is the smoothbore. Okay, smoothbore was so much more popular that because you could hunt large game or small game with it, either one. You could load it with shot or round ball. So it was a whole lot more useful, and it was cheaper than a rifle, which most of the people back then weren't rich. They were very poor, so they only got what they could afford. And this gun would feed the family, defend the home, everything. So it was probably used way more than what Hollywood lets on or what some of the history books let on, you know. It was probably in the Battle of Blue Licks was probably one of the main guns that was being carried. Simply because they were in very close quarters. They weren't shooting from here to the hill over there. They were 20, 30 yards apart, maybe 40 at the most. But the flintlock itself has been around, if you count today's usage, over 400 years. All right, now this is called your hammer or prison in modern terms. And what this is, it's high carbon steel, Now this, during the 18th century, was called the cock, because it looked like a rooster's head. Okay? Now, right now, the gun is on half cock. That's your safety. It will not go off, but when you pull it back one more click, and when you pull the trigger, it does that, and that spark will ignite the powder in this little pan, and there's a hole in the side of the gun that sets the main charge off. Okay.
What could be more Appalachian than a whole festival dedicated to a wild woodland mushroom? We're down in Estill County for the annual Mountain Morell Mushroom Festival. Come on.
Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to the 33rd Annual Mountain Mushroom Festival here in Irving, Kentucky. Glad to have you with us this afternoon. This is the Folkways stage here at the Mountain Mushroom Festival. At the Folkways stage, what we do is show you different ways that you can cook the star of the show, which is the morel mushroom. We call it the Folkways stage because here's not really just about cooking. This stage is representative of the family tradition and the storytelling that comes along with the tradition of mushroom hunting. For many of us in this area, this was something we did with family members. This was something we did as a way of not only feeding our families, but also passing on those traditions within our families to get out and fend for yourself, find your own food, bring it home and cook for your family. So that is deeply rooted in Eastern Kentucky. This idea of self-sufficiency, this idea of being able to provide for our family, even when that meant we didn't necessarily have enough money to go out to the store and buy that. This was a way we could still provide for our families and enjoy something that you couldn't necessarily go out and buy with your own money. So this festival is about the mushroom, but it's not just about the mushroom. It's about our connection to the mushroom, what that means within our families and within our communities. So in keeping with the idea of family, I'm lucky enough to have Miss Cass with me today because we want to always involve that next generation. I have known Cass for, how long would you say I've known you?
I don't know.
I'd say about your whole darn life. Is that about right?
Probably.
Yeah. Cass is a Universal Employee of the Month in my office. She comes by and helps on a fairly regular basis because Cass's grandmother, Miss Bambi, is my office manager. So I have been around her pretty much her whole life, and she is the Employee of the Month. She is invaluable to us at the office, and we're always happy when she comes by to help. Now, you know this child was born to cook, because her name is Cass, which of course is short for casserole, right? Right? Isn't that right? Short for casserole.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, it's short for Castiel, which is very correct. But I'm thrilled to have her. So what we're going to do for you today is the very traditional way of cooking these up. We're going to bread them and fry. All right, so what we've got laid out in front of us is our saltwater bath for our morel mushrooms. And the reason why we soak them is because these tend to grow in sort of a gritty, sandy soil. And as they come up through, and if you take a look at these guys, you'll see that there's all these little ridges and all these little pockets and all these places for dirt to hide. So we soak them in water ahead of time to kind of get that dirt off of the morel so we don't end up eating them. But every now and again, you get a little grit inside of one. That's just added bonus, right? So Cass was talking about how weird they feel. If you guys haven't felt them, they do kind of feel weird. They kind of, I'll tell you what they remind me of. They remind me of a brain.
That's what Mama just said.
I think they look like, well, that's because grapevines think, well, we got big brains.
Yeah.
I think they kind of look like brain, and they're fairly spongy, and they're relatively delicate. So when you're working with these, you can't be real rough with them because they'll simply fall apart. So when we're working with them, we do have to be relatively gentle. Now, there is something called the false morel, but they tend to be a really bright orange color, and they're not really very easily mistaken. There's not much else in the woods that looks like these. They're fairly safe to eat, even for an amateur mushroomer, because nothing else really looks like these. The other thing we're going to do, in addition to soaking them in salt water, is we're going to always slice these in half. And the reason why we're going to slice these in half is because they are, in fact, hollow in the middle. The false morel is not hollow in the middle. It is solid. So one of the reasons why we slice them in half is to ensure that we A, have the right thing, but B, we also want to make sure we don't have any hitchhikers along. So I don't know if you can see my little hitchhiker crawling around. Now see that? He was inside one of these mushrooms. So when we poured the water and the salt to him, he hopped out. So I don't know about you, but I'm not the biggest fan of eating like insects. So generally, I want to make sure I get them all out. Do you like eating insects?
No.
What protein is?
That's picky eater over here. She don't want the extra protein in her diet. So we do soak them, and that is the best reason showing you there. You actually can get small insects and little caterpillars and things like that might be inside of these. Nature doesn't waste anything, and these are a good source of protein in the woods. Everything eats on them, especially the turkeys. But the insects and stuff do as well. So we are going to use the traditional method. We're going to put them in a buttermilk and egg bath and then roll them in flour. I'm a double dipper. I don't know if you guys are, but I like to double dip. One of the things about frying things is when we fry stuff, they actually steam. The oil isn't actually what's going to cook them. When we drop them in the fryer, a little air bubble forms around it, and that air bubble heats up. So if your oil is hot enough, you really shouldn't get a greasy breading, because the breading should not absorb any grease. The breading should crisp up and brown. The morel inside the little cocoon of flour is going to steam, and that's actually what's going to cook the morel. So it's important that we get it fully floured so that it can steam within that little pot. So that's why I like to double dip. So as I'm cutting these, I want you to go ahead and throw them right in the flour for the first time for me, if you would, ma'am. We can just shake them around like that. Shake, 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 shake. Shake your mushrooms. Shake your mushrooms. I can take out some right there on the flour, on the pigtail. And you can put the next one to Now, Cass has never fried mushrooms before. And I think that one of the neat things about her being up here to demonstrate this with me, with you guys, is to show you that you don't need to be intimidated by this process. Anybody can dig in. This is not high fancy, highfalutin, high-tech cooking. This is simple homespun stuff, and any of you guys can do it too. Cass and I very much hope to go home and try this yourself. Alright, now we're going to double dip. Drop right in our egg and buttermilk mixture. And so this is just 2 eggs and about, half cup of buttermilk, give or take a little, and some salt and pepper. Now, one of the most helpful things I ever learned when it came to breading and frying things was I learned that the egg mixture or the buttermilk mixture is basically your glue. And so you use that to get the stuff to stick. And just like any other glue, you want to give it at least a couple of moments to dry. So we're going to pull these off and let them here and let that kind of set up before we throw them in our fryer. And I know some of the old folks would say, when it looks like this or when it smells like this, it's at the right temperature, and I appreciate all that. But I've messed it up a time or two. And when it comes to morels, as rare as they are, as special as they are, I don't want to mess it up. I think that's probably got our fryer full for the moment, okay? So these are going to take about 3 to 5 minutes, maybe 5 to 7, depending on the size. I'm a real basic, I look for golden brown. When they're golden brown, I know they're done. We're going to end up flipping them over about 1 time during the course of that cook. But that's going to be about it. We don't pull them a whole lot. Again, remember, they're really delicate, and you don't want to bump them and prod them a lot because they'll tend to fall apart on you.
place, man. It's that Esther County mountain magic. You truly never know what you're going to find at these creeks. You got to be grateful for every moment outside. And if that nodule rolls, good times continue to roll.
After the coal industry left the mountains, there was a lot of poverty in the area. But in true Appalachian form, a lot of the people living around here found new creative solutions to make a living. One of them here, my friend Taylor Fansteel. We're up on a mountain out in Estill County, and he's making a living with a different kind of rock.
Show you this right here. So we're up here in the foothills of Estill County, and we like to go hunt geodes and Kentucky agates. It's amazing what these creeks produce. The Kentucky agate starts right up about the top of the mountain, rolls down through the bluffs. These beautiful creeks pick them up, tumble them down like bowling balls straight down the hill. It's something special. The place we're at right now produces really pretty rocks, a lot of blacks, yellows, little bits of ribbons of red, even a nice thick band if you're lucky. They say people that do this might find one good red rock once in a lifetime playing in these creeks. I just find it a blessing to be outside. It's amazing the different types of things these hills do produce. But we do come out here, bumble around, see what they do produce. Today I come out here and I find this little tiny Kentucky agate potential. You find a good nodule like this, and maybe 10% of them are going to have a cool band inside. I'm guessing that this is a blown out crinoid calyx, geodized fossil. It's probably going to be full of quartz, but if I'm lucky, you could have a couple little gray bands inside, little squiggles. Maybe a little calcite, some pyrite. We'll take this sucker home. I'll cut it right down the middle. If it passes audit, we'll throw it on a flat lap, polish it up. We'll bring it to the internet, list it on Facebook, Kentucky Rock Sales, or through our personal page, and on our business page, Rocks and Things LLC. We do like to support a little bit of everybody out here. Every single one of these creeks in this county has a special rock. Every single draw's got a slightly different variety, a slightly different color. So it truly is amazing when you see a big array of them on a table. You can almost walk through points and call out what creek it was found, maybe even who it was found by, just based on where you're at. So, we gotta be local, get up in these hills. It's sad that the majority of these places are all private property, but a couple of people let you come play. It all depends on just a little bit of the local politics. We got a friend likes to have us come down and we cut and polish rocks for him. He lets us play in the creek a couple times a year, and my wonderful wife likes to make them some cookies. You know, it's just about being nice and making friends. Heck, I got some cool rocks off some dude I met at the hardware store the other day. That's the best way to go about it. They see your necklace, and they say, "Oh man, that's cool. Is that an agate? I love them agates." The next thing you know, you strike up a conversation, make a friend, get a phone number, and go meet some dude at the gas station. This is what it's about. Support a little bit of everybody. I'm not the only one that does this either. 5 or 6 people really sell a whole bunch of Kentucky agates. And, you know, we all gotta play nice. It's the best part about it. There's enough rock for everybody. With an abundance mindset, you never fail out. Educate. Try not to dig the biggest hole anybody's ever seen. Bring a little bit of value. You gotta understand, if we didn't go out in these hills and pick this stuff up, it'd never be seen. It's gonna get picked up by the current, washed over, buried again. So I like to come out here and just pray I get to find something neat to bring back to society.
Taylor, man,
Yeah.
you live in the beautiful country. You're living out your dreams. You're working for yourself. You're living from the mountains.
That's right.
And you're so kind. You've been so kind to us. You're taking all of us out. You took us out and took our kids out and showed them the beauty of your hollers on this side of the state.
We found a cool snake.
Yes, we did. Sir, I really appreciate you.
Hey, I appreciate you, and I appreciate all y'all. Without a bunch of people enjoying these videos, picking up these agates, we wouldn't be able to go out and make more videos and pick up more cool agates. Look at the creek, check it out. Nature wasn't very kind to it, but we got some clear botril agate. Look at that.
The finest dining in a school bus anywhere in Appalachia. Suppose the logical end of this video, where we've been deep diving into the disappearing culture of Appalachia, would be to have some sort of heartfelt expression and talk about the gentrification of the area and whatnot. But instead, we're going to end it logically with hot dogs. Supposed to zhuzh it up a little bit, right? Like, here at Hillbilly Hot Dogs in Osage, West Virginia, are these delicious, delectable hot dogs with funky names like the Coal Miner and the Mothman. But inexplicably, it may be the hot dogs that are the best metaphor for the region. Simple, with just enough twang on it to make it something unique and special. And in the end, I'm sharing this moment with friends and family, and isn't that really what it's all about? That is a good damn hot dog.
It was right here.
No, it's right here.